Today, we're diving into something that, let's be honest, every single cat owner feels deep down, that pressure to provide absolutely perfect medical care. But what if perfect isn't actually the goal? We're going to explore why good enough is not just okay. It's often the kindest, most compassionate choice you can make for your cat and for yourself. Okay, let's get real for a second. Have you ever walked out of the vet's office with this super complicated treatment plan and just felt this pit in your stomach, that sinking feeling of dread because you know it's going to be a fight? Well, you're not alone. That guilt, that anxiety, that's exactly what we're going to tear down today. All right, so first up, we're talking about a massive mindset shift. It's about embracing this idea of being a good enough pet parent. And that means finding success in what you can actually do, in the messiness of real life, not in some perfect textbook fantasy. Now, check this out, because this table really explains that disconnect we all feel. Your vet, they operate at the best level, right? That's the gold standard. They send you home with instructions for the optimal level. But where do we live? We live in reality. And that gap between optimal and reality, that's where all the guilt creeps in. But it's so important to see it's a practical gap, not you failing as a person. And this right here, this is the core message of this whole thing. You can only do what you can do. If you live alone, if your cat is basically a furry ninja, if you're working with a tight budget, those are practical limitations. They are not, I repeat, not moral failings. Just let that sink in for a second. Doing what you can do is what truly matters. To really bring this home, I want to tell you a story about a very special cat named Annie Four Pistols. She was an older cat, a declawed rescue, and she had, well, let's just say a very strong personality. She was the one who taught me this whole lesson in the first place. So when Annie got sick, the vet's optimal plan was ambitious. And by ambitious, I mean nearly impossible. It involved 3 different supplements that had to be spaced an hour apart, on top of daily fluids. For one person dealing with a cat who was famous for biting, this wasn't just hard, it was a recipe for disaster and a ton of stress for both of us. So we had to get creative. The good enough solution was born. I had a friend who would come over and help. We couldn't do the treatment daily, but we managed it 3, maybe 4 times a week. And we definitely couldn't space out the supplements, so she got them all at once. Was it perfect? No way, but it was something. And something is always, always better than nothing. This really says it all. That imperfect, good enough care we scraped together, it kept Annie happy and comfortable for another 6 whole months. It wasn't the plan from the textbook, but in our reality, it was the best plan possible. And you know what? It was enough. Okay, part 2. Now that we're on board with good enough being the goal, how do we actually pull it off? This section is all about the practical stuff. A toolkit for wrangling your cat at home, designed to get things done safely and with way less stress for everybody involved. You've probably tried the classic cat burrito with a towel and had it fail spectacularly. Well, this 2-step method is a total game changer. First, you get the cat into a pillowcase, which contains all 4 legs and their claws. Then, you wrap that contained bundle in a big towel. It gives you so much more control for stuff like clipping nails or giving meds, because you're starting with a much less wriggly package. Now, this is incredibly important, so listen up. Restraint is about safety, not about winning a wrestling match. If your cat is panicking, and I mean thrashing, deep growling, pupils totally blown out, you stop. You just stop. Your safety and your cat's well-being are always number 1. These aren't suggestions. These are hard and fast rules. All right, let's talk about the universal cat owner struggle, the carrier. This here is Buddha. The second that carrier comes out, he masters time and space, vanishes under the bed, and then, if you do manage to grab him, he somehow turns into liquid to ooze out of your hands. Sound familiar? I thought so. So, because the Buddha situation is so ridiculously common, here are some pro-level tips. A hard-sided carrier is a must. And seriously, zip tie those plastic latches. I've seen cats bust them open. When it's go time, be fast and confident. Don't hesitate. And never, ever be afraid to ask your vet about anxiety medication like gabapentin. It can be an absolute lifesaver for really stressed out cats. All right, on to section 3. We're shifting gears now from physical tools to communication tools. I'm going to arm you with one single powerful question that can cut through the confusion, potentially save you thousands of dollars, and spare your cat a lot of unnecessary stress when it comes to big diagnostic tests. So here's a real-life situation.
I had this sweet foster cat who started showing some scary neurological signs. The vet's first recommendation? A $3,000 MRI. But the earliest appointment they could get was 6 weeks away. The cost was staggering, and the wait time felt like an eternity. So this is it. This is the question. The single most powerful question you can ask your vet in these situations. It's not what will the test tell us. It's how will the results of this test actually change what we do next? Just let that sink in. It completely reframes the entire conversation from just gathering information to making a plan of action.
And the vet's answer to that question was incredibly revealing. As you can see from this table, of the 3 most likely things they'd find on the MRI, 2 of them, a brain tumor or a brain injury, were untreatable and would lead to euthanasia. Only one outcome, an infection, actually led to a treatment plan we could try.
And suddenly, the logic is crystal clear. Why spend $3,000 and wait 6 stressful weeks for a test when 2 out of the 3 outcomes lead to the same sad endpoint, and the third outcome is a treatment we could just try right now? It's about focusing on actionable information, not just information for its own sake.
And that brings us to our final section, being an advocate for your pet when it comes to medications. This exact same mindset of asking why and what's next applies here too. It's all about feeling empowered to understand and, even question a prescription before you just say yes.
Look, you don't need a PhD to do a quick and effective gut check on a new medication. This little 4-step process takes like 15 minutes. Start by Googling for real-world reviews from other cat owners. Then, and this is so important, find the drug's half-life. That tells you how long it stays in their system. A long-acting drug is a much bigger deal if there's a bad reaction. Then you just weigh the pros and cons.
Knowing what to ask can feel like half the battle, right? So here you go. These are actual scripts you can use. They aren't aggressive or confrontational. They're collaborative. They show your vet that you're an engaged, informed partner in your cat's care, and that opens the door for a real conversation.
And this is really the bottom line. A good vet will love this. They'll appreciate that you're so involved. But if a vet gets defensive or hostile or makes you feel stupid for asking these perfectly reasonable questions, that might be a big red flag that they aren't the right partner for you and your cat. At the end of the day, I want you to remember this. You are your cat's #1 advocate. You know them better than anyone on this planet. Your vet is the expert, absolutely, but you are the one living with the results of every decision. It's a huge responsibility, but ultimately, it is your decision. So I want to leave you with this final thought. This isn't just about watching and listening. It's about doing. It's about feeling empowered. So my question to you is, what is one small thing you can do this week to become a more confident advocate for your cat? Maybe it's just practicing that pillowcase wrap, or maybe it's writing down some of these questions for your next vet appointment. That journey starts with one single step.